this and you can hear me all right?
If I get too loud, just like my mother and bit me in the back of the head. Dave Paul put this presentation together without my knowledge. I've seen it twice. I know most of the information. So as I go through it, if it doesn't match up, you just get my attention. I am James David. This particular slide is going to show you a bunch of numbers that makes absolutely no sense to most of us. But what it shows to me is an almost exact match of sorts of my Y DNA. And if you know anything about Y DNA versus X DNA, the ladies get 2 X's, the men get 1 X and 1 Y, and the Y comes down from the father's line. So my father's line matches up with these lines. And I can't really see this, so I'm going to step over here. There I am. This wasn't here for the longest time. And there's a couple of them up here that weren't there for the longest time. These 2 also were not there. So how many people here are that you know you're related to Elder John? Are the Elder John here? You know you are, right. Well, for the longest time, these folks didn't know that you were until there's a lady not here. I'm sorry? You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, there's a lady whose husband was the donor for one of these 2 samples, and I'm not sure which one it was. But on each one of these numbers, you notice this red one here, it sticks out. It shouldn't be there. If we could find another one that was just like that, it would actually help us track and find branches. Because David, Paul, and I, and others in the room, I'm not going to point everybody out, but last summer of the whole Parker family that we came down from, the James Parker that was born in 1752, we don't know where, he rested across the hill, and that's what this whole cemetery cleanup was about, was the idea that our family was there, the Revolutionary and Civil War heroes were there, and were basically being ignored. Well, as time goes by, they weren't being ignored, but as time goes by, there's other generations. My Aunt Vera was pointed out, her son and other generations have tried to do the same thing. So if you know anything about cemeteries, you don't clean them up once. You clean them up and you just stay at it. More information about the family. This is a combination of my line from here up, and it's kind of small, so if you can't read it, I'll try and read it through if you got any questions, but just to show who we are and who we're related to. At the very top, you'll find the James Parker, born 1752. We know that for near fact that he was born in 1752. We don't know where. We know where he passed. Now, I'll walk you through a few ideas of where we think he may have came from, because they're just ideas. What we do have is the genetics. We do know that we're Parkers. We do know that the Parkers had several lines. The earliest that we know of is 1634. It was 2 boys, Elisha and Robert, young lads that we believe their father may have passed and didn't make the voyage. But they were under the guidance of Reverend Lathrop. Lathrop, the name was spelt several different ways. The arrows you see pointed there is about John. And I think Audrey is going to cover a lot of that information in her presentation as far as where John came from, where the family was first noted, the records and such. For example, we have no primary sources that say that James Parker truly existed. There's mentions in some records. I think it's in relationship to his own family. John, on the other hand, well known to be born in Baltimore County. And I'm not sure if this is the actual lines of Baltimore County currently or at what time this map was taken. But this gives you a general idea of where John was at and some of his information. And again, I'm not going to go over that because I know Audrey's going to cover a lot of that later on. And again, this is the lines down. You got the sons across, and I'm thinking they're just about all listed. It's going to be hard to read from where you're at, but this is the Elder John information. I'm not going to read it all down through you, read it off. I just want to key on this one point here, Mercer. Because to me, this is a little bit like that jigsaw puzzle. This is part of the puzzle here. I've talked to several Elder John family members and down in Texas and such, And they have no other listings of a Mercer. Well, on our side, we do. We have a James Mercer. On their side, they have a Silas Mercer. Same generation, actually. Now, what the fathers were thinking, whether it was, in fact, from Mercer County, Kentucky, which was an adjoining county, I don't know. I do know that there are Parkers, what I refer to as this, that first slide was Parker Group 5. All of those DNA samples, they're all matching samples. Those Parker lines, in the Revolutionary time, several served, and before that they served in the French and Indian War. And I believe, my theory is, that many of them died. There were many orphans created in all wars, specifically the French and Indian War, and specifically about Parkers because of where they lived. They were, as Washington said, they were on the front lines. And again, this is Elder John, I believe is that Elbert, Audrey? Is that the Elbert? Elbert, Georgia. And listed there are the births that I'm assuming, we haven't found it to be incorrect anyway. But this, again, just to give you a general idea where John went from Virginia, he went down to Georgia and then he went up to Tennessee. You've got John born in Tennessee, 1807, Susanna.
His son.
His son, John?
Yes.
Okay. Within our time frames, when they were in Tennessee and Georgia, we were in Kentucky. So my premise is that James and John are brothers, and they were reunited. I don't know that, and we stated that in the brochure that everybody assumes that. I've stated it as fact, but in fact, we have no proof of that. I believe it. My family's always said it, and then once my DNA matched Elder John, it pretty much nailed it down. These are more of the Parkers on my line. Well, you can read most of that yourself. And again, I'm not sure. We've got two Sarah Ann Minturns there. I don't think he married her twice, but those families all came out of Ohio. The Allen family came out of Kentucky. The Newman family came out of Kentucky. The Pinkstaff family, I'm pretty sure, was in either Kentucky and or Ohio. The Newmans, you notice they married, there's two different, actually, Newmans. There's Sarah and Mary, yes. The brothers married sisters. And there's some discussion as to whether they got married in Kentucky or they got married in Ohio. Back when they were in Kentucky, they, well, it was 1780 when they got there. 1780, Kentucky wasn't a state, Kentucky was a district. It was a district of Virginia. And Virginia was a very large place, and over a period of years, Virginia got smaller as other places took its place. State of Kentucky come out of Virginia. Of course, West Virginia came out of Virginia. Parts of Illinois come out of, the Northwest Territory come out of Virginia. It all changed over in year after year after year to where in 1780, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85 are my third great-grandfather and uncles, great-uncles and such, were born in Boston or near Boston, Kentucky. Boston, Kentucky, oh, we need to back up. I'm sorry. Anna Doty, we know, was born in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. In that area are Dotys. So if you're related to Dotys, so are the Parkers. And the Dotys are a very old family. The Doty line came over on the Mayflower. Edward Doten was his name, D-O-T-E-N. You'll find it spelled D-O-T-Y, which is how we spell the Dotys that we're related to. And there's others, D-A-U-G-H-T-E-R-Y and D-O-U-G-H-T-R-Y. They've spelt their names different. The Dotys and the Parkers are what my signal is that the tie to who is James's father is in New Jersey, because that's where she came from. And in New Jersey, you will find a lot of Parkers, you'll find a lot of Dotys, and you'll find a lot of names tied in with those same names. General Alexander, Sterling, was his sister married a Parker Group 5 Parker. His brother married the widow, a Parker widow, a Grant. And all of these families, the Parkers, the children, the orphans, are mentioned in their wills, but there's no names. There's no exact ages. They were minor children at a certain time, or they were orphaned because of this, but sometimes the names are lost. So James's parents, John's parents, Joshua York's parents. Joshua York was born on the 22nd of January, 1756. Joshua York was not a York. He was raised by Jeremiah. They had 2 or 3 kids at the time, and they had 2 or 3 kids afterwards. And I'm in contact with the York family and the descendants of Joshua York, and they know that they're not Yorks. And they didn't know who they were, and they assumed, like I do, that they're probably Parkers. What happened, we do not know. What I do know, the facts that I have put together on this one item, how did Joshua York, not be a Parker? There were Parkers all the way around where he was born and raised, but they were not the same Parkers. They were thought to be, they're not. This is where genetics has kind of split the hairs and said, well, Grandma was right, Grandma was wrong. Grandma was partly right, Grandma didn't have a clue. I deal with people all the time on Parker heritage who believe that they're related to Quanah Parker. Sadly, when they find out they're not, they don't really want to talk to me either. I don't know why. But, some people, they get off on that, I guess. It's a big thing to be related to Quanah Parker. I know in my family it was a double-edged sword. You would either be proud and maybe a little bit skeptical, or maybe you were harassed. Maybe you were given a hard time. In fact, in earlier years, it was in fact that way. It wasn't something you bragged about by having a Native American within your bloodline. It's almost like they had muddied the water in some way. Of course, that's not fair. We've all grown up a bit since then. But the Parker family, they go way back. And what I found in the New Jersey route, I can show you right now. Here you go. See this little spot right here? That's Staten Island. We're going to call that Marshall. You ever been to Marshall, Illinois? This little spot right in here, Plainfield. There's a lady that I think might be my grandma was born there, but we can't get her hooked up. But there is a lady from up here, I'll get a little closer on my map. This area from here to here, Charleston, Casey, Marshall. That's the distances we're talking about. I'm assuming these people knew each other. Back then, maybe not. But they were Parkers, and these particular Parkers were well known. They were related to a lot of the families back in the day. They were called the proprietors of West Jersey. They were rich. They were in touch with the big names of the times. From New Jersey in 1780, I don't know how they got to Boston, Kentucky. We know they went to Virginia. We know that Elder John was in Culpeper. I believe his wife was born and raised in Culpeper. The James story, there's a big gap in it. We don't know at the beginning of it. We know where the ending was at. We're sure, we haven't found the documentation yet, but we're sure, we've heard the story so many times, that he was a Revolutionary War soldier. I don't have anything that says that he was. I just know that he was. I was told that he served at the Battle of Monmouth. Well, if you do your history in the Battle of Monmouth, that was in New Jersey. And also that he served possibly with, at the Battle of Blue Licks, which was the last battle. It was even after the war was over, this battle was so late. But if you look at Blue Licks, it's in Kentucky. So he would have had a reason to be near there. He served in the militia. A lot of the people that served in the Revolutionary War, they weren't necessarily with the stripes and the uniforms. They just picked up the rifle and went. And as David Paul will attest and others will attest, the Parker tradition says if there was a shot fired somewhere, they heard it and they went. They liked to scrap. They liked to fight. I'm thinking home life was not for them. They were always on the move. So in 1780, they were in Kentucky. By the turn of the century, they were getting chased out of Kentucky and up into Ohio. And they kind of backtracked a little bit, but they went up into Ohio. From Boston, Kentucky to Butler County, Ohio, just across the river, just north of Cincinnati, present-day Cincinnati. Cincinnati was there at the time, but they went north of there. 4 Mile Creek is a term that I've seen around lots of places. I've never been to 4 Mile Creek. I've been to Boston, Kentucky. It's a little bitty place. Westfield is bigger. If you've ever been to Westfield, Westfield is bigger than Boston. Yeah, bigger than Boston. You can't see it on this map because it's too big. And I will grant you this. Go home and Google it. Get on Google Maps and get it down there where it says 2 mile radius. Or a 2 mile, what's that technical word there? The scale, there you go. Thank you. He's my senior. The scale of 2 miles, you take Illinois, the same area, you pull it down to the same scale of 2 miles, and you'll see this. And you know what's right in the middle of all this? About right in here. What would be, east of Charleston and north of Casey? It's called Westfield. It's right there. You can't see it on your map, but it's there. And of course, it has nothing to do with the Westfield here, but just to the scale of why I believe these people are related and they know each other. This is a outline of the state of Kentucky, and what's shown there is the current Jefferson County. Jefferson County in 1780, though, took up about half of the state, including Mercer County, Nelson County. This is showing Nelson County. I think that's current. At one time, Nelson County was most of this section, much like Jefferson was that section before that. And right in here, I think this is Mercer County, one of these two. I'm not big on Kentucky. Are we lost yet? All right, let's get to Illinois. From Ohio, they crossed Indiana. Now, I don't know how they crossed Indiana, but right across in here somewhere is the Buffalo Trace. The river, this again doesn't show where all these towns are, but they're in Ohio over here. Can you see? I'm sorry. They're over here in Ohio, and that's a pretty good journey across there. I don't know if they went straight across or they caught the river and then followed the Buffalo Trace. I don't know. But they came from Butler, Ohio. This says in 1816. I've seen a piece of paper that shows that James bought property in Crawford County in 1817. That I know. I've read where Elder John showed up about 1815. 1817. I've seen different things. But again, we're in the right era. They had to have seen each other. And I can't stand here, God is my witness. I cannot stand here and tell you that I know that they were related and knew it. I can tell you they were related. I tell you, I know they were related. And I'm assuming that they knew it. And I'm assuming that they're brothers. This is a close proximity. Again, Parker Prairie was so called because of George David, my third great-grandfather, and his brother James. They came up early 26, for sure by 27. They built a cabin near where the cemetery that Dave and Paul and my brother Martin's here somewhere. We've been cleaning this thing up for the last few years, and it's been a tussle. But where they built it at was very ingenious. But it's a moraine, glaciers. I get educated every time I study the Parkers. I didn't know what a moraine was. Moraine is basically a debris field from a glacier. When the glaciers come down, they pushed a lot of everything. Miraculously, what was found at the gravesite? A stone from Wisconsin. I don't think they packed them down here. The glacier pushed it, but they built this where they decided to settle at. Back, you realize this is the early 1800s. There were still Kickapoo running around. There were still problems. There's still going to be the Black Hawk War afterwards. So they moved into trouble everywhere they went. But in this situation, I really think this was where they had had enough of it. And I've had this question posed before. Why didn't they go to Texas? Why did Elder John go to Texas? I think it was God. They had that inspiration, whereas James, I'm thinking he's a little bit like me. He'd seen enough. It's time to settle down. He was getting up in years. He was older than Elder John. His wife passed in 1830. He passed in 1835. They left in 33. So he was here when they left. He was here when they got here, I think. I don't know that. But for 15, 16 years, they lived over the hill from each other. And I don't know how good a neighbor you are to the people you know. I moved to my current house in 98. I just had to think about that. It's been that long. It's been that long. And believe me, I know all my neighbors. So I'm assuming they know each other. Dave, Paul, you want to talk about the cemetery?
Sure.
Now, my good cousin here, Dave Paul, we didn't even know each other, what was it, 3 years ago? 2011, yeah. I'm going with. Yeah. We're going on 4 years. I know this guy from nowhere. And we have the same fourth great-grandfather. That's a great-great-great-great-grandfather. Didn't know each other beforehand. Over here is cousin Jimmy, I'm sorry. Jimmy, raise your hand. Last summer, the three of us and Margaret, and is there someone here from Robinson? I thought maybe she would be here. She isn't here. Oh, he knows who I'm talking about. Well, anyway, last summer, that's why I'm so excited. Last summer, we got all 5 of that family together. And to me, that was pretty extraordinary. Tell them how we cleaned up that cemetery.
A descendant of all 5 of the sons.
Here, have a root beer. When we got there, it was a jungle.
There was 4 of us there, and we found out, I think Jim had already left maybe. Shirley Neese from here in Charleston arrived. She sat outside in a van. She's not very mobile, but so we had that day, we had the descendant from all 5 of the sons. And, a long period of time, and lots of spread out families, and it was a pretty special day. So, and before I go further, I just want to mention Carolyn Stevens from over by the cemetery. She teaches some classes around this area, Civil War buff, a real angel, and helping us research, and spent time here at the courthouse and library and all of her other friends. So we've taken a lot of inspiration from her, and Jeff Veach from Martinsville. He's another Civil War buff, mainly on Clark County, but taking a lot of information from him, and it really helped out. Didn't want to do this without giving her some accolades. About 6 years ago, I thought I was retired, so I had some choices. Now, since I've been back in the labor market 2 years, but this was one of the choices, and I just didn't think that was for me. So I found Ancestry.com, and my wife had previously started some research, but it was before we had a computer and the internet. Did it on paper. Well, I found out how easy it is on the internet, so I started a tree, and it wasn't very long before on Google, through reading a couple of documents, Parker Cemetery near Westfield, Indiana, or Illinois. Zoom, that's what appears, just exactly like that. And this is from 2012. And you can go back in time, they'll show different screenshots. Here is a picture from 1970, Shirley Neese had taken and posted. Kind of blurry, it was just not a good picture, but that's as clear as it ever got for me. Doesn't look like a real nice cemetery at that time. And I think Stacy Heinz, Tom Heinz, I've been in contact several times, her family, there's Tiplets, I believe is the name. They took They took a reading of the stones that they could read. And I've used that quite a bit in my research for the names to look at stuff, because I've been trying to read the stone and clean them up. Tom took this picture, and you'll see this post here in the corner. He took this picture in 1997, and you'll see this is the north end of the cemetery. Very few trees. There's a big cedar, a couple big cedar trees. There's some down at the end of the fence line. I think the leaves here on the upper right corner is part of this big cedar tree that's there. But other than that, it's pretty clear. A lot of weeds. And there's another picture. I don't know the dates, but there's just a lot of bramble, a lot of stuff around. There's a gated area that's up towards that northwest corner. Still not a lot of trees. There's some cedar trees along the back end there. Well, October 2011, 2010, my brother and his wife and myself and my wife decided to go over there and find it. And this is what we found, this picture here. And I only took 2 pictures. I could just shoot myself, you know, for not taking a lot more pictures. This is that same north end of the cemetery. And a lot of these are sassafras trees that self-propagate. They'll root down like a mulberry tree and they'll pop up everywhere. And here's another picture. Some of these trees were just an inch across, some of them like 3 or 4 inches. So in a period of 13 years, the cemetery was beginning to become overgrown with stuff. That was the end of our, except for some agave plants you'll see there, some green. There wasn't a blade of green anywhere in the cemetery. It was the end of a big drought here. We got back here in late May after a rainy spring. Well, there's a poison ivy, big poison ivy thing across a giant tree that's down in one corner. We'll get into this a little bit. Here's a couple aerial views, 2010 and then 2014 on this side, and you can see there's been a lot of vegetation cleared out there. You can see a cemetery from the north road there now. You can see some of the stones, especially when the crops are down. First cleanup. Now this is May of 2011. There's my oldest son, my youngest son, and my oldest son's foreign exchange student. It was very wet, so we had to unload the tractor off of the trailer. There's about from just past where we're at, you can see between 2 fields, there's a 500-foot stretch that's just between 2 fields. It's still bare. The landowner around the cemetery, his grandson, I guess, is going to try to plant some grass across through there so that you can drive anytime. But right now it's frozen, so you can drive across it. If it's been raining anytime at all, if we have a big thaw, you know, you're going to owe a big tow bill. It has to be really dry to drive across it. And the fields are a little bit different level. Rain washes across there and ruts it up really bad. So if they get a good grass stand, I'll get to a picture here in just a moment. Go through some shots here showing some of the debris and stuff we've encountered. There's Henry the chainsaw cutting up some of the debris we just saw. And this is, you know, October 2010 when we saw the drought. And this is late May. This stuff is over our head. It's not a normal yard grass. It's more of a daylily. Just grows super fast. So from the growing period, maybe April, you know, when the stuff starts growing to late May, that's where it went. And this is the wild stuff that we encountered. You know, it's just tall grass. You can cut it if you can know where to cut, not run over stones. There's a picture where we cleared a trail down through some of this stuff. There's a trail along the south end, and the south end, kind of in the middle of that south end, you can see a couple of a spot there where there's a big gap in the post. One of the posts there has almost like an eye bolt bolted into the post, and there's a post into the fence, steel pipe. We believe at one time you can lift it out of there, except for all the weeds and stuff, you can't get it out right now. We believe that that was the entrance to the cemetery. The older maps and people that live in that area said many years ago the entrance come in from the south of Mr. Nixon's house, who lives up on that front road, or the west road. It went south of his house and up into the south end of the cemetery, which the south end is kind of a low area. And eventually, because of being so muddy and hard to get to, you know, they moved it to the north. Well, that land is all up and down, part of this moraine. It's very terraced, and any kind of rain, you can't get through there. Now, October 2010, we just drove my wife's van right now through all those, you know, it's just baked. and we drove across that and got to the cemetery. There's my middle son, or my youngest son. He's over there trimming around through the trees. That area is after some of the trees have been cut down. Another shot, there's 2 or 3. The agave, it grows in wintertime, and you can't cut it, you gotta dig it out. It's very tough, almost like a cactus. People plant those in some cemeteries, and that's okay if it's maintained. If it's neglected, it just takes over. So we've had to dig out a lot of that agave. There's a close-up of it. Very tough stuff. Other cleanups we've had through the years, we found the old sign. I think, James David, did you find that sign?
I think it found me.
They found it. The road to the west of the cemetery, Mr. Nixon lives along. Got a small farm place there. There is a culvert along that ditch. You can still see it. Piece of pipe along the ditch, and it's covered where you can drive over through there. And that was laying down in the weeds. And we've propped it up against our fence post. And what you see now is on the northeast corner of the cemetery. Got a sign here, cared for by the 4th and 5th grandchildren. My son got this for me for Christmas, and we got it put up last year. We got it put up, so. And we faced it kind of towards the east instead of towards the north road. I was afraid it might be a target for, youth come along and want to shoot holes in it, so tried to protect it a little bit. But anything that kind of honors our people there. Got a shot here now. This was in 2013, I believe. And the weeds there are about waist high. And this is about 4 weeks, maybe 5 after a cleanup. You mowed clear down to 1 inch tall. That's just how fast that stuff can grow. You can be gone 3 weeks, come back, it'll be knee high sometimes, depending on the grooming period. We're trying to get that out of there, cut down and keep it mowed to where it doesn't get so bad, and then eventually get some grass grown in there. Get rid of this daylily stuff, just goes crazy. Here's after the cleanup in 2013. We was getting ready for the open house that we have that parallels with the Westfield Festival. And there's myself and James David and Martin, his brother, and James David's wife, Christine. And we take these pictures. I've been trying to take these pictures, leaning up against Jephthah's tombstone. It's right up in the front corner. It's a nice big stone, not very apt to topple over, so we just kind of leaned across it to take these pictures. We got several pictures like that. And there's James David and Martin back there in the corner, cleaning up that one corner. And once they cleaned up where the fence was, makes it so much easier to maintain and mow instead of worrying about the fence and all the weeds. So that's one of my next goals, is to get the fence out of there and where you can just mow. Be nice and clean, kind of like cemeteries that's out in the open, right up by the road. Got several different shots, much different than what it was. Here's Carolyn with my granddaughter. She was over there. She likes to ride the tractor with her, all trim around the stones, with the self-propelled mower. Excuse me. And then she'll move across there. There's me with her. This was 2 years ago, I believe. Stump removal. I showed you the pictures of the stumps. This is what some of them look like, and there's some stumps. That's right up next to the stone, so we couldn't use the stump grinder. But we have cut out around 140 tree stumps that mostly James David and Martin cut down. Now you can walk through there. The trouble with the stumps is it makes it difficult to mow. Especially if they're really low to the ground, you don't see them. but that blade coming around, we'll see it. But that day we cut in 4 hours. My youngest son and I cut, I think, 80 stumps in a 4-hour period with a stump grinder. And there's a picture of the stump grinder. It's all automated, so it took the work out of it. Problem was, it was 83 degrees that day, or 93, I'm sorry. I was back just last August. September, it was 93 degrees, and my weather bug on my phone said it felt like 103. And he was very angry with me the whole day, very angry. He called me 3 times the evening before, trying to cancel out, and I kept shaming him into going with me. I said, okay, but I'm going. Well, he didn't want me to go by myself, so he agreed to go along. I tried to get him to come over here the other day, but he said, no, it's too cold. I said, well, that evens out when he was over here in that heat. But he wouldn't buy that. But I do owe my kids, my family, a lot, for support I've had coming over here. Really appreciate it. There's my youngest son. Unmarked stones. Did not bring my copper rods with me, but they're about 1/8 inch diameter rods, about 13, 14 inches long, and they hold them like this. And that's how I find the unmarked ones. You just walk across a known grave, and it's going to close up. And as you step across there, then they'll open back up. You can move 3 foot down from the headstone, do the same thing. You get down about 5.5 feet from the stone and walk across there, nothing. So it's not a gimmick, it's not a trick. It's known by people that look for water wells, and that kind of stuff, water lines. There's a void in the ground, so that water tends to go into that void, and somehow it creates some kind of a field. I'm not a scientist, but it creates a magnetic field or something, and it reacts like that. In fact, if I still had this full of water, I could lay it on the ground, on the floor here, and you walk across there and it'll react to that water. I have found through that method, now this is a rock that, sticking out of the ground, and there's a grave there. And I've been making these, they're kind of like a paving stone. And I've been stenciling across there with paint and then a couple layers of clear coat to help preserve it from the elements of the weather, so it will last longer. There's about 40 unmarked graves. No stone, no rock, nothing. And I've got about half of them marked like this. So this spring I'll be making up some more and taking over there and putting there. Right now they're marked, if you go there, I call them a driveway marker. Fiberglass rod about this long, stick along the edge of your driveway, and in wintertime, you can see in the snow where your driveway's at. I got them marked with that. I have not totally walked every single row fully, because usually when I go over there, I got so much work I got to do to clean up, but I've walked the majority of it, and there's about 40 unmarked. So that's what they look like. I've got some others in the southeast corner. You'll see a rock back here with that rod I talked about. I don't know if you can see it real well on the screen or not. There's a white top. There's a rock back here, and there's a grave. And that rock is the only one that the grave is west of the rock. All the graves in that cemetery, the graves are on the east side of the stone. And I think they normally are in cemeteries, but this one particular, the grave is on the other side of the stone. This is on the outside of the corner post. There's a grave there. And the last time I was over there, when I took these pictures, the grandson of Mr. McVeigh was out doing some brush cutting, and I got a chance to talk to him a little bit. And they've been plowing right along the edge on this corner, just at the bottom edge of the picture, where they've been plowing to. And I asked him if he could move over about 3 or 4 feet. You know, we're getting closest to the edge of a grave here. And, you know, they're not gonna dig deep enough, but still like to stay off of the grave. So he said that was fine with him, he'll back off. And they've been cutting this corner closer on this south end than they do the front anyhow. So he's kind of been going in an angle. And then there's 2 on the inside. You can see one of the stones on the outside, just to the left side, but there's 2 inside. So there's 4 stones there that's got graves with them. And one of them, the graves, you know, extended under the fence, if you measure it all. So there's, you know, I haven't got them marked with the unmarked stones yet to honor them, but it will be done. There's a picture further out. You can see the one big one. It's really big on the outside here, that first one I showed you, in relation to these 2 that's inside. Mapping. I've encountered a couple different readings of the cemetery. One was from 1970 with the Tiplets. A couple others unknown who did them, but they read what they could through the leaves or through the gravel and stuff was in there. It wasn't cleaned up good, so you know, I was having trouble going around through there. I'm an engineer by trade, and you know, I've got a design package where you can draw on a computer, and I just started in one corner with a 100-foot cloth tape measure, put a screwdriver by the fence, stretch it out, lay it down, and start walking along with a piece of paper, you know, write down, if I could, initially, who was there. Dates, names, and all that. Come back, and it took a long time to do, but put them on the computer and got it laid out. And I've not published this to any place yet because it's still a work in progress. There's a few changes, but I will publish this at some point. It's very hard to read if I email it to somebody because I've got this drawn over here, 2 by 3 foot, and I can read it easily. If somebody's got poor vision, they're going to have trouble reading it. But I did bring along a copy, so people could look at. My vision for this was to get it to a point, if some disaster happens, tornado wipes out half the cemetery, vandals, I've seen some terrible things happen to that. At least we'll know who was there. Maybe some effort could be made, you know, to replace some of them, but I want to preserve this for our history. And by the way, are there any Lee descendants here besides Bill? Huttons? Coxes? Cox? Lemasters? Around Westfield at that time, around that area, there were many there. And just say if you were, we're cousins, we're related, because they all, Bill was telling me about one of his family, you know, married to Parker, Lemaster, up here in the corner. Abbott Lemaster, he married, he was in the Civil War, but he married a Parker. It was the daughter of James Alexander, or John Alexander. Here's some pictures of the open house that we had this last year. It's the second year we've done this, coincided with that Westfield thing going on, the festival over there. We had around 40 people. Last year, the year before, we had 46 people there. And the white van back in there in the background is where Shirley Neese was sitting. She's just not able to get around. And we didn't discover her at first. But have a great time. People visit, you meet new friends. Barbara Ross from Robinson was up there. I've met her, I corresponded with her several times. Finally got to meet. Bill's there every year. Meeting some people, Jim and his wife from Rockford. Maryland was there from up in Michigan. Great time. So if you're in the area this next August, 3rd August weekend, welcome you out. And there's Bill Lee, and
His dancing partner.
yeah,
Aunt Vera.
Aunt Vera there, the matriarch of James's side of the family from John Alexander, or George David, and on down. Okay, there's some others that's trying to read a stone. This is Marilyn down there squatted over. She's trying to read a stone, you know, from see exactly who it was. There's Jim and his wife standing there, again with Jephthah. We've taken lots, I've got a lot of pictures of Jephthah. Jephthah, when George sold the property, all around that, he sold it to Jephthah. When he sold it to Jephthah, he exempted the cemetery. The deed transfer exempted 0.65 acre, known as the Parker Cemetery. We still haven't traced exactly what's happening through there. We're looking for wills, we're looking for other deed transfers, but it's separate. There's a picture of 4 of the cousins, and this is before we went out there and had a chance to see Shirley. Such a long period of time to have, you know, family member from the 4 of the 5 sons together in one picture. Really regret we didn't get Shirley in there. There's same cousins with some of their family. 2 years ago, last year, 2 years ago when Tim was here. Okay, we had the DAR, Carolyn arranged for the DAR to come out there and to have a meeting. And Carolyn dressed up as Anna Doty. We gave a little presentation talking about the veterans there. And she's trying to get a thing going this spring. Coles County DAR to come out there and do something for the veterans. I haven't gotten the military plaques for them yet.
Is that what you want to do? I'm in the local, in Coles County DAR.
Yeah, okay.
And we don't understand exactly what you want us to do.
Well, just to come out and have a ceremony maybe. Like I said, I need to send.
For the Revolutionary War soldiers.
Well, yes, yeah. Well, these are Civil War veterans here.
Oh.
These are Civil War, and I don't know what you do. Maybe nothing, but just come out and, you know, have a little
Because we
ceremony.
talked about it at the last
Okay,
meeting.
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
We do have a Revolutionary War veteran, James. Again, James, don't have that one certificate, but we've seen a lot of stories. James and John were both supposedly, John's proven. We got those things from the government, you know, that he was there. We haven't got that done yet with James. The lady from Clark County encouraged me to get that for James. He was supposedly in the 6th and 10th militia for Virginia, you know, so we gotta do that. There's me doing some presentations, some of the pictures and the charts. Civil War veterans, and we'll wrap this up with this. We've got 8 veterans that we've identified. We've got 2 or 3 others we're looking at. It's really hard to get records on. I can't believe I haven't found any Lees yet that's been Civil War veterans, but we're looking. Here's Abbott Lamaster. He married a Parker. There's Anthony Cox. October 8th, 1862, Battle of Perryville, Kentucky. Okay, killed there, 25 years old. And, you know, Coles County, Clark County, of course, this Jeff Each, he's a Civil War veteran that focuses on Clark County. The Civil War took a much more larger toll on human lives than all the other wars combined. You know, when you get to reading that, terrible toll. And Clark County, this region of Illinois, had the higher percentage of people killed than the whole state of Illinois. So it was tragedy. Here's Claiborne and Fuqua, and there's a Claiborne and Fuqua that was a banker down in Casey. Different family. And I've really been having trouble getting most of his line identified, but I'm still working on that. Nathaniel Berkeley, His stone was really worn. It was a soft stone. John A. Parker, John Alexander Parker, in his line, fourth or fifth, sixth child of George David. And so he was there at the same time. He was the uncle of Jonathan, who right here was killed in Perryville at the same time. And originally I thought, well, John A. was granted a leave of absence to bring the bodies back. But I found out since Carolyn was telling me this, and then this Bill was just telling me, he's talked to family members that talked about when the people in the community, I guess, friends and neighbors, were waiting till the wagons came in, or some of the family went to bring their bodies back. Now, this is not central Illinois, but a ways from the county line, and you know where Kentucky's at, and I'm not exactly sure. Perryville, I think, was in the middle. By wagon, a long trip in October. Family members went and brought them back. Now, this picture was taken earlier, and since, you know, we set it up on supports to get it out of the ground, and so it wouldn't be harmed. But since this stone is cracked in about 2 places, but I've got information from the Veterans Administration. They will replace them free if they're damaged. So I just need to describe what's on the stone, and it has to be shipped to a business. I just got to make arrangements to get that done. Hopefully I can find a business someplace closer here instead of hauling it 3 hours away, but they will do that. So it's one of my next tasks.
Will it be the same likeness?
Similar. There's a place where you can write in there what was on the original one, and they've got some that's very similar. Silas Hutton, there's still a lot of Huttons in that cemetery. He was in the Civil War, just discovered that recently. And then William H. Berkeley, another Berkeley. And the Berkeleys were in Kentucky and Ohio at the same time with the Parkers. I think they knew some of the Lees way back. Some of them maybe come from Kentucky or something way back in, but you know, as always, you know, neighbors know each other, they become friends, and they travel and move someplace else, and word gets back, they bring other relatives and friends, and they move on. So, we're gonna move on now. Steve is coming up with his presentation, and I can't say how much, looking forward to some of their efforts to come to fruition later. I was out there a couple times with him, and the other guy was out there earlier doing some GPS work. You know, they're creating this database. They had the drones flying around. I'm gonna let you tell him all about it, but it's really neat to be around with this database. Carolyn and I are trying to finish up this Excel program with all the information so they can tie them to the stones. But you know, it's a great project. So.